In this video, we delve into the tragic story of Dennis Orbe, a man whose life spiraled out of control, leading to a series of crimes that shocked an entire community. This is not just a story about a criminal, but about a man broken by his past, crushed by his circumstances, and ultimately consumed by his own decisions. His story serves as a haunting reminder of how desperation and trauma can push someone beyond the point of no return. To understand this story, we travel back to a week in January of 1998, where 39-year-old Dennis Orbe found himself at the lowest point of his life. He was a man whose world had come crashing down, and the scars of his past ran deep. Some would say that Dennis's life was shaped by a series of tragedies, events that slowly but surely chipped away at his sense of purpose and control. It all began with the early abandonment by his biological father. A wound like that never fully heals. To add to the pain, Dennis endured abuse from his mother's second husband, leaving him emotionally scarred. In adulthood, he sought connection, but his relationships faltered, and his own marriage fell apart. When Dennis lost custody of his 2 children, it was as if the last thread of hope unraveled. The weight of these failures was too much for Dennis to bear. To cope, he turned to alcohol, drinking so heavily that it became a crutch and numbing agent for the pain. This dependency came at a steep cost: his job. Unable to work, Dennis lost his ability to support his children and fell deeper into depression. By the time 1998 rolled around, Dennis was a man on the edge. It's said that he had recently reconnected with his biological father, a reunion that may have stirred up old wounds. He wanted desperately to visit him, to perhaps find some closure, but his financial situation made that impossible. With his life in disarray, Dennis became determined to gather whatever funds he could, even if it meant stepping into the world of crime. His descent into criminality began on January 21st, 1998, when desperation finally overwhelmed him. Lois Jones and her boyfriend Mark returned home to a nightmare. As they entered their bedroom, they were met by Dennis standing there, pointing a gun at them. His eyes betrayed the chaos in his mind as he lied, telling the couple he was on the run from the police. At gunpoint, Dennis ordered Mark to follow him to their car. But just as they left the house, Lois retrieved her gun. Determined to stop him, she confronted Dennis on the porch. Without hesitation, Dennis fired twice, one bullet striking Lois in the calf, shattering her bone. The pain was excruciating, but she stood firm, defiant. As Mark stood in shock, Dennis demanded the car keys. But even in his terrified state, Mark refused. Furious and unhinged, Dennis fled the scene, disappearing into the cold January air. Later that day, Dennis found himself face to face with 2 elderly men, Charles Powell and William Bottoms, who were sitting in the yard. His demeanor was erratic, his hands shaking as he brandished his gun at the 2 men. "I have nothing to lose," he spat out, forcing them at gunpoint to walk to the rear of the house. Terrified, the men handed over their car keys and wallets. But in a twist of fate, Dennis left them unharmed, taking Mr. Powell's car and fleeing yet again. For days, Dennis lived in the stolen car, wrestling with his inner demons. His life was in a downward spiral, and every moment felt like a ticking clock. Then, on January 24th, 1998, in the early hours of the morning, Dennis made the decision that would seal his fate forever. It was just after 3 a.m. Dennis, realizing he was running low on gas, pulled into a convenience store in York County. He tried to pump gas, but realized he had to pay first. With no money left and nothing but desperation in his heart, Dennis entered the store, walking up to the counter where Richard Burnett, the clerk, stood. The .357 Magnum revolver in Dennis's hand felt heavy, but his resolve had hardened. He pointed the gun at Burnett and demanded he open the cash register. Burnett complied, his hands trembling as he opened the drawer. But then something shifted. Perhaps it was Burnett's movement. Or maybe it was Dennis's paranoia, but without warning, Dennis pulled the trigger. The bullet tore through Burnett's chest, and he staggered back, clutching the wound. Dennis, now in a panic, grabbed the $90.65 from the register and fled. The CCTV camera above the counter captured everything. The horror, the chaos, the murder. Burnett lay on the floor, bleeding out, as first responders arrived almost an hour later. The footage was immediately taken to the sheriff's office, and soon after, Dennis's face was plastered across the news. He had become a fugitive, and the manhunt had begun. For the next few days, Dennis continued his crime spree, still desperate for money. On January 30th, he accosted 3 women: Karen Glenn, Patricia Tuck, and another woman who had entered a residence to clean. Dennis, lying in wait, ambushed them, striking one with the butt of his gun and locking them in a closet before stealing their car. By this point, the community knew his name. And on January 31st, after a dramatic high-speed chase through Richmond, Virginia, Dennis's reign of terror came to an end. He swerved recklessly, hit telephone poles, and even tried to escape on foot. But the police cornered him in an alleyway, and the .357 Magnum in his possession would later be used as the key piece of evidence in his conviction. During his trial, Dennis was convicted on 4 charges, including capital murder. He never took the stand during the trial, but during sentencing, he gave a 25-minute speech filled with regret and sorrow. He pleaded for death, hoping it would bring peace to the family of Richard Burnett. "I would trade places with him if I could," Dennis said, his voice cracking. "No matter what you think of me, I'm not the monster they say I am." I didn't mean to kill him. The judge sentenced Dennis to death. His mother, present in the courtroom, remained stoic. When asked about the sentence, she simply replied, "I expected it." Dennis spent the next few years exhausting his appeals. He reflected deeply on his actions and the life he had taken. But as his execution day approached, he protested the method of his death, calling lethal injection inhumane. On March 31st, 2004, Dennis Orbe was executed. At 9:13 p.m., his life ended as a group of protesters outside held a candlelit vigil. Dennis Orbe's story is one of tragedy, pain, and consequences. It's a tale of a man broken by his past, whose actions led to his own demise and the loss of another innocent life. His case forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about trauma, crime, and justice. Could anything have been done to stop the chain of events before they spiraled out of control? It's a question that lingers as we reflect on this tragic story, a reminder of how one moment, one choice, can alter the course of many lives forever.